Okay, it looks like we're ready to start the Tuesday morning classroom session. Hi, everybody. My name is Noah, and we are going to be working or actually looking through our appointment book basics webinar. So this presentation, like our other presentations, is designed for people that perhaps are new to shortcuts. Perhaps you have a new receptionist or a new manager, or you haven't used the system in a while, and you just want to get up to speed on some of the basics. So usually every other week, we alternate between a basic class and an advanced class. So we are recording this session and we will be making a copy of this video available to everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. So hopefully everybody has their coffee and everybody has their notepad out. I'm going to check my audio levels. Can everybody hear me? I think so. I see the audio levels moving. I'm going to bring the microphone a little bit closer and see if that helps any. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So this presentation, like other presentations, is about 30 minutes. We are going to allow some time to ask questions at the end. We are recording, so if you have to drop out early, that's okay. We will send a link with a copy of today's video on it. Hopefully everybody can hear me, so your speakers should be on. You should be hearing something right about now. And on the right side of your toolbar, if you're new to the GoToWebinars, there is a little chat window. There's also a little question window. So at the end of the session, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and type it out. And of course, after the fact, if you think of any questions after today's presentation, I'll have a number that you can call and of course an email that you can send to. Plus, we're always checking our social media. So if you reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram, we will get back to you. So the focus on today's presentation. So we are looking at the basics on the appointment book. So we're going to show you how to navigate around the appointment book, how to work with tags and tasks, some of the appointment book extras, and a little bit on the cloud appointment book. Now, the cloud appointment book was actually the first few presentations that we had in this series. So if you are not caught up to that, and if you go to our Shortcuts webpage at shortcuts.net, or even our YouTube channel at Shortcuts USA, and if you go to our previous classroom sessions, you will find we've already posted videos on working with the Cloud Appointment Book. So how do you navigate around the appointment book? How does it work? What's the basic layout? What's the basic usage? So as you can imagine, the appointment book is very much an electronic equivalent of the traditional paper and pencil appointment book that used to be used at salons and spas. So you should know how to enter and how to read your staff hours, how to work with your day buttons, whether we're looking at today's date, if a customer wants to make an appointment for the future, how to navigate forwards and backwards through your appointment book, how to jump into the calendar setting. So if you want to look even further into the calendar, perhaps you have a client that has a wedding party and they'd like to plan it out a few months ahead of time. How to get basic employee information from this window. How to filter through things, and of course, how to access the menu. So we're actually going to do a live demonstration on the location of most of these buttons. So we're going to get out of the presentation for a second and jump into the actual Shortcuts point of sale. So we'll jump over here. So this is traditionally the screen that most of you are familiar with. It's the appointment book screen. So at the very top of the window are the names of your staff members, and at the bottom of the screen are how you can advance or go backwards on your appointment book. So this would be the equivalent of turning the pages forwards or backwards, one day at a time or 1 week at a time. And of course, snapping back to today. I'm going to turn off a filter if I have anything on. No. So unfortunately, I don't think I have anybody scheduled for today. And on the left side of the screen, if you notice, these are the hours of the day. And it's actually the business hours of the day. If I were to click and drag with my mouse, I can actually scroll up or down on the appointment book and see what the rest of my day looks like. Now, if you'd like to see more of your particular day, on the bottom right, we have a menu button. So this is where you can set what's called the view mode. So do you want to look at a quarter of the day, half the day, or the entire business day? And notice when I choose all day, it does not show me a 24-hour day. Instead, it shows me my actual business hours. In this case, if my pretend salon here was open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., it only shows me my business hours. Now, if I happen to have an employee that actually is scheduled to start working earlier or stay a little bit later than the business hours, then my schedule, my calendar here, will actually open up to include those extra hours. So depending on how busy your appointment book screen is, you can choose your view mode. How much of the day do you want to look at? Now, as the day progresses, you do not necessarily have to click and drag and move the hours. Shortcuts will automatically advance the screen as the day goes on. Also, there is a gray portion, a gray bar, that starts to cover your appointment book. So as the day progresses, this gray screen will eventually cover your entire appointment book. So you know at approximately where you are in the day. So at the bottom of the screen, you can go forwards or backwards, one day at a time or 1 week at a time. And here is something that you should know about. On your mouse, or if you have a touchscreen, if you right click on the week button, you can jump ahead or go backwards 2, 4, or 6 weeks at a time. Now, if you have a touch screen, this is how a right click works. If you hold down your finger for just a half second on a touch screen, then Shortcuts thinks you're trying to enable the right click command. So you don't always have to use your mouse. You just hold down your finger for a second and there it is. It does a right click. So on this window, normally you would choose what day or what time the customer wants to make an appointment. But again, if a client wants to make an appointment further in the future, again, a wedding party or something else, on the top left corner, there is a calendar button. And when you press the calendar button, it actually allows you to choose a particular month and even a particular year. So let's say somebody has a wedding that they're going to schedule for next July 2021, then we can choose perhaps they're coming in on a Thursday or a Saturday. And then Shortcuts will jump to that day. Also, when you're in the calendar view, if you notice on the left, the months are actually sideways. If you're using your touchscreen or your mouse, you can actually click on the months and drag it up or down in case you just need to see an extra week or two. So those are just some of the basics. Navigating, finding your way around, knowing a little bit about the view mode. So let's go back to the presentation. So now that you know the general layout, the general look of the appointment book, you should absolutely know the basics. How to make appointments, how to add new clients, search for existing clients, how to move and resize appointments, how to delete appointments, how to change the appointment status, how to work with what's called a touch tip. So again, if you've not used Shortcuts in a while or you're brand new to Shortcuts, this is essential for working with the appointment book. So again, we're going to do a live demo on my pretend database. Now, I believe the one I'm working with, instead of a traditional salon or spa, I'm actually pretending this is for a tattoo parlor. So my list of services aren't going to be haircuts or hair color. They're going to be tattoos or body piercings, but the steps still apply. So to make an appointment, it's very easy. On the appointment book screen, if you're using your mouse or you're using your touch screen, Whenever you click under a particular employee, Shortcuts is going to think that, okay, you want to make an appointment at a particular time. And on the left side of the screen, you'll actually notice that the hours highlight in yellow, just so you can tell if you're clicking on 11 or 11:15. So there's no mistaking it. So I have a customer that wants to come in at 10 for an appointment with employee number 1. So I'll click that empty block, and the first thing Shortcuts does is it brings up my client screen. So I can tell Shortcuts I need to look for a customer via their first name, their last name, or perhaps a phone number. Or on the left side, I can just manually choose an existing client. So I'll choose my Shortcuts test customer and then press done. So I search for my client, I press done. If I haven't updated my client card in a while, then Shortcuts is going to ask me, is there any other information I can provide for this client card? I'll say yes, I got a new phone number. The second thing that Shortcuts wants to ask me is to choose a tag. Now, your salon or your spa or your barbershop doesn't necessarily have to use tags or even have tags set up automatically, but I would advise that you should use it. And the reason for this is so that you can tag each customer that comes in and let Shortcuts show you what type of client they are. They'll show you, they'll show your staff. Is this a new client? Is this a salon regular? Is this somebody that requested an employee? What's the particular deal with this customer? So at the end of the month, you can actually run a tag usage report and you'll know exactly how many new clients did I have versus how many requests did I have versus how many shop regulars. So in this case, this is one of my salon regulars. So I'll choose that tag. And now once I press done, Shortcuts will show me my service menu. And again, normally your menu will say something like haircuts or massage or spa service or haircut. So whatever it is, that's on the left side. But for the case of my studio, we're going to be doing a tattoo. And I'll choose the first one, an hour-and-a-half tattoo here with employee number 1. Once I choose the service and press done, it appears right on the screen. So for employee number 2, let's say this is a new customer. So instead of searching for a client, I'm going to press new and enter some of the basic information. So the next person that comes in is Sammy Shortcuts. And I get a phone number. And perhaps I get an email. So once I've added my new customer, I can press done, say this is a new client, press done, and then choose a service for them. So this person is getting a 2-hour tattoo. So it's very easy to add a customer or to choose from existing customers and make an appointment. Really, you just click anywhere there's an opening on your screen. Once the appointments are on here, you'll actually notice that they have a few things in common. A regular appointment appears in this green shade, and it's actually in 2 shades of green, a light shade and a dark shade. If you use your mouse or if you use your touchscreen and you click and drag on the dark portion, you can actually change the length of the appointment. So notice I mention dark shade versus light shade instead of left and right or top and bottom. And the reason I say dark shade versus light shade is because if the appointment gets very short, the colors sort of change position. So to change the length of the appointment, always choose the dark shaded area. Now to move the appointment, that's where you would click anywhere in the light shaded area. And you can move the appointment up, down, left, or right. So the light shaded area lets you move it, and the dark shaded area lets you change the length of the appointment. The other thing that these appointments all have in common is if I click one time on an existing appointment, at the bottom of the screen, I get what's called a touch tip. It says, who's the client? Perhaps what's a contact number? What service are they getting? With which staff member? What's the estimated cost of this? So this gives the staff member a little bit of information. Why is the touch tip important? The reason for that is because if the appointment is very, very short, perhaps 15 minutes, if you're looking at the appointment book, the only thing I have is the name of the client. I have no idea what service they're in for, neither does the staff. But if our staff clicks one time on the appointment, then at the bottom of the screen, it will give us further details. So, okay, Sammy is in for 2 hours. So I can make sure that it is reflected here. So just keep that in mind. That's called a touch tip. Now, on this window, there's always 3 button presses that I like to remind everybody of. So when you're new in shortcuts, remember that 3 button presses control everything. You're either going to do a single click, a double click, or a right click. If you do a single click anywhere where there's an opening, you can of course search for a client, add a new client, and make an appointment. If you do a single click on an existing appointment, you get the touch tip. Now, what about double clicks? If you double click on an appointment, you bring up further details about today's visit, but down at the bottom, your 2 most important buttons are history and card. Let's go to card first. When you're in card, this is the customer's basic contact information. So if a client mentions, I have a new phone number, or this is my email because I'd like to sign up for your mailing list and get coupons from time to time, this is how you update it. You double click and go to their card. And on the right side, if the customer mentions, maybe I'm getting too many email messages or spam, can you please take me off your marketing list? Absolutely. Right from the middle, you can uncheck their options or make new options for their opt-in details with regards to marketing. On the bottom left corner, where it says message, this is just general information about the client. This does not show up on any report. It does not show up on any screen. This is really just for you and your staff. So on messages, this is usually where your staff just puts in additional details for the clients, just so they can know a little bit more about the customers. So in this case, Sammy, he's a new client, but has 2 kids that also get their haircut here. Jaden and Sally. So little pieces of information just to get your staff to know who these customers are. If there's additional information that you find out about the client, perhaps on their 2nd, 3rd, or 10th visit, somebody mentions, hey, my birthday's next week. You can absolutely mark it down in their client card. If you go to the info button on the bottom center, it's in this mail button. And now we can set, oh, okay, I just found out this customer has a birthday that's coming up, and other details. So this customer mentions perhaps they're a teacher and they actually heard about you on social media. Every little piece of information you can get from a client can actually be used for marketing purposes in the future. So you can tell shortcuts. When somebody's birthday rolls around, send them an email before their birthday so they can schedule a visit. Or it's perhaps back to school season and I want to let all my teachers know to come in for a visit and we'll make sure they're ready for the first day of school. So shortcuts will know, oh, okay, I want you to email only people marked in education. So just keep this in mind. Every little piece of information you can get for a client can be used and saved in your client card. So it's always great for marketing. So now that I marked that this customer has a birthday coming up, you're actually going to notice something slightly different on the appointment book screen. So Sammy Shortcuts has a tag on the top left corner. I can see that Sammy is a new client because the new client tag appears on the top left corner of his appointment. My Shortcuts test customer has a little S. He's a shop regular, he's a salon regular, so that's why he has the little S icon. On the top right corner, there is a little I, a little blue square with an I. And what that stands for is information. Oh, hold on a moment. I noticed somebody had asked a question. Well, I'll answer it for Sally. All right, I'll answer your question, Sally, when we're done. Unfortunately, Sally stepped out, but I'll still answer it when we're done. Okay, so on the top right corner, there is a little blue square with an I, and it stands for information. It's letting us know we can still add more information in their client card. Perhaps it's an email, perhaps it's a different phone number, whatever the case is. We'll want to continue to fill in as much information as we can each time a customer visits. Now, at some point, you're going to have all of the potential information for a client that you can possibly have. You'll have phones, emails, you'll have their referral options, their birthday, their occupation. So at some point, your staff doesn't have to keep asking for more info. When that day comes, on the right side of the client card screen, there's a little checkbox that says extra details, card complete. If I tell Shortcuts, this customer's card is complete, I don't need to ask any more questions, then when I go to the appointment book, the little blue square for I disappears for that client. So now the staff can focus on somebody else. Now for the case of Sammy Shortcuts, there's a different button there. It's a little green square with a little candle button. So this is letting me know this client has a birthday coming up. So that's just giving me a heads up. So if I click on it one time and my touch tip appears, that birthday now appears on the touch tip. So that's just a little bit of information that can help you keep track of your clients. So the other types of icons that can appear there. So let's say my Shortcuts test client, different piece of information. It's something more important. So perhaps this customer has an allergy, has a sensitivity. So in that case, we're going to go to the alert button because I want everybody on my staff to be aware of this. I do not want to put in just a general message. So I'm going to press alert. And the message I'm going to use is perhaps this client is allergic to tea tree oil. So of course, it's in a number of products, and I want to make sure if my staff works with any of these products to avoid it. With this customer, look for something else. Or in the point of sale, if the customer is going to buy a product, we want to avoid referring anything that might contain tea tree oil. So I press the alert button and I save that message. And now when I look at my Shortcuts test customer, there's going to be a different icon on his appointment. It's actually an exclamation mark on the top right corner to let me know there is an alert here. And when I click one time to use my touch tip, it actually shows up at the bottom of the touch tip. This client is allergic to tea tree oil. So every time my test customer comes in, he will always or she will always have the alert there. So this alert can be anything that's important for you or your staff. If you have a salon that works with a lot of kids, and perhaps one of the kids that you work with is perhaps special needs and they need a little bit more time when they come in, then you can put a message in there that says, please add an additional 30 minutes or 15 minutes for this customer just because they have some sensory issues. So we have to work at a slower pace with them. Or if you have a customer that usually has really long hair, and sometimes the color needs a little bit of extra time, or they just need a little bit of extra time when they're getting a haircut. Again, you can put a message that says, this client, always has extra details or extra things that they're doing with their hair. Please pad in extra 15 or 30 minutes for their appointment. So if it's important enough that your staff should know about it, don't just put in a message, put an alert in their client card so that everybody knows about it. And that alert will follow them every time they make an appointment. So that's a double click. Double click, go to their card, and record those details. But even more important than just updating client information, basic client information, is going to their history. So on the history button, every service, every product that they've ever had will show up on this window. But down at the bottom where it says notes, this is where you record your important information. So if you're a salon, this is where you tell shortcuts. This is the color formula for this particular client. Or if they usually get a certain type of haircut, if you have a barber shop or a salon that does just men's cuts or ladies' cuts, and this customer is always asking for the same thing, go ahead and put in their style of haircut here. So you could say, oh, this is a clipper cut, and they have a guard number 2 that they have, or they do a scissor cut, or they do a fade. Whatever that is, press the new button and type in their style of haircut. So I'll say 2 on top, 1 on the sides. That's just my quick note. So now that note will always be there. So even if employee 1, the regular employee for this customer, isn't available, and this service gets assigned to employee number 2, and the customer says, give me the usual, I can go in there, look at the history. Oh, and there it is. I know what the usual is. So those are the double click commands. Now, if you right click, this is where you get the ability to change the status of a visit. So why is changing the status of a visit important? If you have a lot of employees and your appointment book is filled up, you want to be able to sort of direct traffic using your appointment book. So when a customer comes in, you can of course mark them as arrived, and that changes the color of the appointment. If a customer is a no-show, it's yet a different color. And of course, you can undo these as well. So if you're dealing with perhaps 10 or 12 columns of different staff members and 2-3 dozen different appointments throughout the day, it can be very busy. But just by using your color codes, you'll know exactly who's arrived, who's in the chair, who's a no-show. And all of this is useful because even if you're across the room and you can't read the name of the appointment or the name of the customer, you can at least look at the color and you can tell, oh, I have a customer that's already arrived and I have a customer that's a no-show. So maybe my receptionist can call somebody that was waiting for an appointment. So try to get in the habit of using your status. So let's go back to our presentation, and that's a right click command. So we're able to make appointments, we're able to move appointments, we're even able to add customer details, customer notes, and even mark the status of the customer. But what are the other things you can use on your appointment book? So of course, sometimes you have to put in when an employee is not available or when an employee is doing something so that no other customer can try to make an appointment there. That would be a task. So you should know how to set up a task and how to use a task. So we'll pause there for a second and we'll go back to shortcuts. So I already showed you how to use tags and how to change the tags. But let's say employee number 2. At 12 o'clock, employee number 2 is going to take a lunch break. So I want to mark it off on the appointment book so that the receptionist or anybody else does not try to take that time. So I'll click on employee number 2's 12 o'clock opening as if I'm making an appointment for her. And if you notice, at the very top of your client list, there's a button that says schedule a task. And this goes for every version of shortcuts that works with the appointment book. So I'll press schedule a task and done. Now in shortcuts, by default, there are 3 tasks: assisting, lunch, meeting. You do not have to use any of these. You can delete them and create your own list of tasks. And you can even choose how long they are. So by default, a lunch break in shortcuts, I believe it gives it 60 minutes. Or I can go to the edit button and change my default time to be 30 minutes. So I'll set lunch for 30 minutes, and that's the task I'm selecting. And there it is. And if you notice, the task is very much like an appointment. It's in a light shade and a dark shade, and the same rules of the appointment still apply here. If I want to move the task, I can click on the light shaded area and I can slide it left, right, up, or down. And if I want to make my task longer or shorter, I would click on the darker shade and I can make my task maybe 15 minutes or 45 minutes. So the same light and dark shade rule of an appointment also applies to tasks. And if I want to create a new task, I'll go to schedule a task and press new. So maybe the new task I'm doing is called daycare. So every afternoon, my employee has a 45-minute round trip to get their kid from daycare and drop them off. So every time I choose it, shortcuts will block out a task that's exactly 45 minutes long. Okay, let's go back to our presentation. Now, the reason tasks are important, outside of just letting your receptionist or your team know where everybody is and when they're not available, is because tasks also synchronize online. So if you have online booking or if you have self check-in, if you're a barbershop, and you do not want customers booking when your staff is supposed to go to lunch or when they'd like to go to lunch, then put in a task. And then shortcuts will prevent customers from trying to book them during this time. So let's go back. So what are some of the other things you can do with the appointment book? You can group customers. So if you have a family that comes in or a wedding party, you can group these clients together. You can recur appointments. If you have a regular customer that comes in every week or every 2 weeks and they want to hold on to a certain day or time, you can do that as well. You can put notes against your visits, and of course we looked at that by double clicking and going into the history. You can also leave messages for your staff, and you can even look at future appointments. So before we look at the cloud, we'll look at some of those extras. So grouping and recurring appointment. So back to shortcuts. So to group a client, if you right click on a customer, you can put them in a group and you can give them a name. So I'll say, I'll call this group the shortcuts group. But you can imagine it could be the Smith family or the James wedding party, whatever it is. And every member of that group, when you right click and you put them in that group, they're going to have a double dot. And this double dot color, in this case, the first group has two black dots that appear on the bottom right corner. So every member of that group will have the same two black dots. So you can identify groups on the appointment book. But those colors will be randomized. So if another group comes in, they may have a red and a blue dot, or two yellow dots, or two red dots, or two green dots, or a green and a blue. You get the idea. So those color combinations are attached to a particular group. Now, the one rule that I always advise is whenever you have a group situation, family, wedding, party, whatever it is, don't just group them together. Also mark them as arrived when all of the customers in the group arrive. That's going to help you check them out at the point of sale. So let me take them out of the group. The other thing you can do is recur an appointment. So let's say this customer, and again, in my salon, we're not doing hair services, we're doing tattoos. So this customer has to come in every Tuesday for the next few weeks to get his tattoo done. And of course, this is not realistic, but just for the sake of training. So if my test customer is going to hold on to his Tuesday 10 o'clock appointment with employee number 2, then this is how we recur it. We're going to right click on the appointment, and in the middle of our pull down list, go to recur. To repeat an appointment, it's actually very easy in Shortcuts. Shortcuts only needs to know two things. When is the next visit? When is the last visit? So if this tattoo is complex and it's going to require maybe 10 visits or 12 visits, then I'm going to tell Shortcuts the next time they come in is next Tuesday. So that's March 10th. So I'll click on March 10th. And the tattoo artist says, this tattoo is going to take me until the end of April. So I'm going to click on the last Tuesday in April, which is the 28th. So once I choose the next and the last, Shortcuts recognizes, oh, this customer comes in every week at the same time. And it will book this customer at 10 o'clock every Tuesday with my employee for their hour-and-a-half visit. So if there was a conflict, if it just so happened that another customer had booked a Tuesday morning with employee number 2, then it will skip that Tuesday and still give the client the next Tuesday as an available appointment. And Shortcuts will warn you. It'll say, sorry, but this Tuesday, March 17th is not available. Somebody has already booked it, but I will book all of the additional Tuesdays. So this is how you can always recur an appointment. If you have a customer that comes in every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, every 5 weeks, you can do the same thing. So we'll do that with Sammy Shortcuts. Sammy comes in every 5 weeks. So we'll right click, we'll go to recur. So again, two things. When is his next visit? So Sammy Shortcuts will be back on March 31st. And then this customer comes in every 5 weeks like clockwork, probably until the end of the year. So I can go to December and I can choose the last Tuesday in December. And then Shortcuts will automatically do the math for me. It'll make a Tuesday morning appointment every 5 weeks with the same employee. Now, leaving messages for your staff. So we already talked about double click, put in a history note for your customers. But what about your staff? Let's say you want to leave a message for employee number 1 or employee number 2. Perhaps it's their turn to do some inventory. You can right click on their name and go to message. And the message for today is your turn to take out the trash. So when this employee comes in and they click on the message at the top of the screen, then Shortcuts will show them the message, your turn to take out the trash. And I can leave messages ahead of time. So I can go tomorrow to tomorrow on my appointment button, right click on employee 2, and this time leave them a message. So tomorrow is employees 2's turn to take out the trash. So that message will be waiting for employee number 2 tomorrow. The other thing that happens when you right click on a staff member at the top of the screen, you can view their week. So if you ever have a client that calls in and perhaps you have a very popular stylist or a very popular employee that you work with, and their books are always full, and they say, what does this employee schedule look like for the week? Well, it'll show you if there's an opening, and you can actually see by clicking at the bottom of the screen and see up to 3 weeks in advance for any staff member. Now, from this window, if a customer calls up and the client says, I'm sorry, it's Sammy calling. I can't make today's appointment. Is there any chance you can schedule me for tomorrow? Absolutely. If I see there's an opening, I can slide Sammy's appointment from one day to another day. So as long as there's an opening, I can just drag and drop that appointment. So no more deleting appointments, no more recreating it on another day. You just drag and drop it. Okay, let's go back to our presentation. So you now know how to recur appointments. You know a little bit about working with messages and even viewing the week. So all of the things that we've looked at, all of the basics in the Shortcuts appointment book are very simple to access. Just remember, you either do a single click, a double click, or a right click. That controls absolutely everything on the appointment book screen. So with that in mind, if you're working remotely, or if you have a tablet in your salon or your spa or your barbershop, and you want to free up so that the employees can make appointments, can move appointments around, and it doesn't necessarily rely on your front desk to do all of that. So we do have a cloud appointment book. It has all of the same basic functionality of the Shortcuts point of sale appointment book. You can search for customers, make appointments for them, move appointments around, access their history notes, write down new history notes, put in tasks. So it's all of the features of the appointment book, but it's mobile now. So you can have a tablet between every employee station, and if somebody needs to move things around, they can do that. They don't have to bother the receptionist or go to the front desk. So of course, you just need an internet connection and some sort of mobile device. It could be a tablet, it could be a phone to access this cloud appointment book. So you should now know some of the basics in this Shortcuts point of sale appointment book. How to work with making appointments, adding customers, working with tags and tasks, and even a little bit about the cloud appointment book. So now is where we open up the floor for questions. So I'm going to go back to the question that had been posted right at the start of this presentation. So we had a customer or somebody that was sitting in on the presentation for a minute and then they left. But before they left, they asked the question, I need to know how to select a stylus. I am a solo user, so it shouldn't be hard to accomplish this. Well, Sally, I don't know why you're having a problem or why you dropped out, but let's go back. So right on the appointment book screen, I don't know where the confusion lies because whether you have one column or 12 columns for 12 different employees, as soon as you click on an opening, Shortcuts will ask you to search or create a new client and then make an appointment for them. So I'm not sure how you were having difficulty with that because it's really just a one-click operation. Perhaps you didn't enter staff availability, or if you're working with the walk-in manager, you might want to look at our previous presentation, the one we did last week on working with the walk-in manager. Maybe that's what you're using. So there is a process where you clock an employee in, choose a customer, then you can put them in service. It's different than the appointment book screen. So Sally, if you get a copy of this video, if you review it later today, and it's neither of those scenarios, let me know or let somebody on staff know, and we'll try to figure out why you can't make appointments. So it shouldn't be that difficult. Okay, are there any other questions from anybody else that's sitting in on this presentation? And I'll give you a moment, and you can use the chat or the question window. Okay, Ken has a question. When I right click on my appointment book, under the appointment, I only have the confirm and you need the review option. So let's take a look. So in this case, we're looking at today's appointments, and sometimes you would have something that says requires review. And how that works is if an appointment is made online, it will have a review question. And all that does is it highlights this appointment. Before this client comes in, take a look at the service they requested, see if there's a conflict. But if it's missing, how do you get that status back? So we'll go into the setup screen, and let's move this over. Setup configuration. And on the left side, under general, appointment book. So on that first column, there are some additional features that we can enable. So we're going to not track appointment service status. That's if a service is starting or ending. Do we want to ask if the employee requested the appointment? Not necessarily. And clash, no. Where is that on? That's a good question, Ken. I haven't used that feature in a while. Medic appointment tag, where is it? I may have to double check because I notice it's not on mine either. I may have disabled that feature. Let me go back. Show touch tip, employee information. I'm going to check this one. I don't think this is it. Let me double check. Done. Now, usually I have to go to restart shortcuts if I make a change in my settings. But I'm going to try to move an appointment and see what happens. There we go. So I think it's for appointments that are not necessarily made today, unless the appointment is made online. that should still give you the option to review it. But if it's an existing appointment, by default, I don't think the review option should be there. Again, unless the appointment was made online, then it should allow you to click the review or have you reviewed it, yes or no. I hope that answers that question for you, Ken. All right. Are there any other questions that our listeners may have for today's presentation? Okay. Well, if you think of anything after today, you can always let us know. So you can reach out to us. And if you have an older version of shortcuts and you're looking at features that you didn't know existed, or you have an older version of shortcuts and you do not have the cloud because you have an old version of shortcuts, you may want to see about upgrading your version. So reach out to our customer care team, see about scheduling an upgrade. Here's our number. And of course, you can also reach us on our social media pages. So if you think of a question on anything we talked about for today, go ahead and reach out to us. We will give you an answer. And just remember, these are some of the appointment book basics. We're going to dig in a little bit deeper to some of the other features in the appointment book next week. So before you ask the question, try to sit in on next week's session, and that should hopefully answer any of the lingering questions. But let us know if anything comes up. We will be sending you a copy of this recording a little bit later today. So I appreciate everybody that attended, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Have a great day.